Hi everyone, it's Kathy Ondas with Simply Cards by Kathy, but today I'm here with you for Connect to Create. Now, if you're new for Connect to Create, it is a collaboration between myself and another Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, Pat Fairless, from Fairless Stampin' Flair. And the whole purpose of Connect to Create is to bring you short videos each week where we alternate doing the videos on techniques and tips that you can incorporate into your stamping and paper crafting. Last week, Pat did a great video on how to do Joseph's coat. So if you didn't get to check out that video, it can be found on either one of our YouTube channels under the playlist Connect to Create. Today, I want to show you how to use the Stampin' Up! Masks and how to use die cuts as stencils in your paper crafting. So I am going to switch this over to my desktop and we're going to get started. So the first thing I want to show you is how to use the Stampin' Up! Masks. Now these masks, you get five or six of them in a pack, and they can be found on page 128 of the annual catalog. Now, they're easy to miss, but they're called Artistic Mix Decorative Masks. So with that, I want to show you what they look like. You get several different masks of different decorations. And you can even put some of them together, like the large square with the small, I'm going to call it plaid. If you put those together, you get a whole nother look that you can use for stenciling. These are great to use your blending brushes in, give some color to, and then maybe stamp your sentiment or your greeting. Today, I'm going to show you this one. And I will then show you a card that I used after I made this. So I'm going to bring in a piece of paper. Now, the paper can be any size because then you can cut it down to what you want it to be. And all you're going to need is the mask and a blending brush and your ink. So I'm going to lay my mask over my paper, and I'm going to bring in some tape just to hold it down for me. And I'm just going to position it right about here. And then that holds it still so that I don't have to worry about it slipping or moving around. Okay. And then I'm going to use crumb cake. Just because it's what I used on the sample that I made. And take my blending brush. So I'm going to go ahead and swirl my blending brush, and I'm going to start off the mask, and then I'm just going to move on and continue to lay down my color. Now, you can lay down as much color as you want or as little. And it can even be in a variation. Yesterday I tried it almost like an ombre color, where it was darker on the top, and as I moved down, it got a little bit lighter. So just gonna grab some more ink. Now I oftentimes will start off the paper and move on to what I'm working on, because if you look to the right of me, you can see when I tap off, you get that dark spot. And I don't want that dark spot on my paper at all. So that allows me to pick up the ink and then get that dark spot off and then move on to my paper. And again, oops. Let me see where that was before there we go. So that's why you tape it down. So, and you can also hold it there as you go. Okay, so I'm going to take that off. And let me And look at that beautiful design that you have from that mask. And then you can just trim it down to the size you want. I think this was cut at 4.5 by 5.5, or 4.25 by 5.5, and I'm where I could trim it down. And I'm going to bring in the card that I made yesterday. Now I used what did I use? Mango Melody, I believe, on this one, where today I showed you the crumb cake. But here's the card I made using that design as a background. So really pretty for backgrounds or to incorporate. I'm going to show you how to incorporate some of the designs as a focal point. So there's the first card. Now we're going to go to how to use your dies. So I am going to bring in my split card texture die, and we're going to use this one. So how do you use it? Well, you could try using it by just laying it down, and I'm just going to pick up some ink and going right over it to get your design, if you can see that. But I chose not to do that. What I did is I cut a piece of cardstock to size of what I would use on my card. So this was 4 by 5.25. I'm sorry. And then I did the die cut. And then I used this to lay down on my paper. So let's go ahead and do that again. So I'm going to bring in a little mat here to hold my paper down. And we're going to bring in the cardstock. So this is 3 3/4 when I finally measured it out by 5. So it is cut to a layer that would be on our card. And I'm going to go ahead and tape this down, but I want to make sure my ends meet. And then I can hold this down. So I'm going to use my crumb cake again, and I'm just going to pick it up and start off here. And I'm just kind of laying down the color lightly. Get my hands in the way here. I'm not taping this down because I don't want to take away from getting color on the corner. And let's move on to the and go all the way over. And I think that's pretty good. So let's move this off. And pick up my stencil. And I'm just going to take my paper off. And here is your stenciling, or an image that you created from cutting with a die cut. Now I'm going to bring in the card that I made showing you this. So with this, here's my card. It's the exact same stenciling, and I used the sunflower, Celebrate Sunflower stamp set, and use that as my background for that. So isn't that pretty? So there's a second background. So now I'm going to show you a third, and this is going to be just a little bit different. I am going to leave this ink out, and I'm going to bring in pumpkin pie. And then I'm also going to bring in crushed curry. So 3 colors. So you're probably wondering what I'm going to show you now. Well, I'm going to show you how to take a die cut that is very intricate, such as the sunflower die from Celebrate Sunflowers, and use this with the daubers to actually make a background that you can cut and use as a focal point to your card, or even the background to a card. So let's go ahead and do that. So here is the die cut, and I'm going to lay it down, and I'm just going to put a little mat under here to keep my paper from slipping. I'm going to lay that down, and I'm going to bring in my daubers. So I'm going to bring in one for pumpkin pie. I'm going to bring one in for crushed curry and one in for crumb cake. And I'm just going to start laying down some color with my dauber. So right here, I'm just going to tap for the center. And now I'm going to switch over to my crushed curry, and holding this down, I'm just going to fill in where my petals are to the sunflower. It can be as light or as dark as you want it to be. I love this technique, and I'm anxious to show you what I did with it. Then I'm just going to move it over. I don't really care about it getting out of the lines, because you'll see what we're going to do with it after. So now I'm just going to lay it down here in the middle, and I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to just keep working to cover this paper by stenciling this die cut. I'm going to go in with our crushed curry. And you are going to be able, I'm going to show you how when we're done, to even use this die cut in your card. Okay, so I'm going to go over to here and just going to add some color to the with the petals. Okay, I'm going to come back here, and we're going to add a little bit. And you just keep working around the paper. And again, it can be whatever you want it to be. We have so many die cuts and so many options to use them for, other than just cutting out our stamped images. And this is another way that you can use them. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of the petals here. Okay, now I'm going to come in with my pumpkin pie, and I'm going to fill in around that circle for the center of the flower. And it may overlap, and that's okay. I'm not going to get too worried about it. And I pressed a little hard there. I'm going to give this a center here, and the same down here. Okay, let me close these up so I don't get my hands in them. Which I just did. But let's take our paper, and this is the paper. So So what could you do with it? You can use it as a background. And I'm going to show you what I did with it. I cut it. I picked out the pieces I really liked of my design or background paper, and I cut it using my stitched rectangle dies. I matted it with early espresso, and I made it into a card. And then with the die cut that I used as a stencil, look how pretty the coloring is on that. Well, I then cut it and used it on the inside of my card to help finish off the inside, and carried through that design from my stenciling. So let's bring all 3 cards back in here. This is one that we use the masks from Stampin' Up. This is one where we used a die cut and made our own stencil from it. And here is where we used another die cut of a detailed image and made it into like a background paper and cut it. So I hope you enjoyed these, and I'm going to lift this and go back to front view. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope I was able to show you some ways to use your stencils and masks in your card making. And we will be back next week. Pat will be back, and I forget what she's doing next week, but I know it'll be good. So I hope you have a great day, and I'm going to challenge you to use your use your dies or your masks and use them in your card making. Have a great day.